I have heard from a few of my old friends that our upcoming webinar, Make Your Own Guns, a Guide to 3D Printed Firearms, is dangerous because it will increase violence in our society. Now, here's the problem. Since the 1990s, two things have happened. The crime rate across the country, until just this last year because of COVID, has plummeted, dramatically been reduced. At the very same time that gun ownership has skyrocketed. So, that may not be an exact causal relationship, but it is very hard to argue that giving citizens more guns will cause more violence. That's why everyone who's interested in providing for their own security and not relying on police or the government to protect them should take our upcoming webinar, as I said, Make Your Own Guns, a guide to 3D printed firearms that is being taught by Alex Holliday, otherwise known as the famous Control Pew of the 3D world, who has been one of the leading producers of blueprints and instructional videos on 3D guns for about 2 years now. It will meet every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time in March. Go to renegadeuniversity.com and you'll see it right there on the front page, or you can click video courses on the left to get there as well. But sign up now. We've had many people enroll for this, and we will have to limit it fairly soon. So go to renegadeuniversity.com and sign up now for the incredible, unprecedented course, Make Your Own Guns. I hope to see you there. This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. This is a show about ideas, people, and behaviors that are considered inappropriate, out of bounds, or beyond the pale. The things you're not supposed to talk about if you're a school teacher, a college professor, a businessman, a politician, a parent, a neighbor, or even a podcast host. These are the things you're not supposed to say or even think if you're a good liberal, a good conservative, or a good citizen. Each week, I'll interview a person who has something bad to say. They might be a journalist or a professor. They might be a porn star or a drug dealer. They might just be an ordinary person with an ordinary job who doesn't care about the rules of polite society. I'm not interested in breaking the rules just to be a troublemaker. I'm interested in people who break the rules of conventional thought and to expand the scope of what is possible to say in our society. I'm interested in people who make me think. Every time I have this week's guest on the show, I am convinced yet again that he is easily the best expert on American foreign relations from an anti-war and anti-imperialist perspective that we have. And this interview might be my favorite one of all. This is my interview with Scott Horton. I am joined today from Austin, Texas by the one and only Scott Horton, just one of the all-time most popular and most downloaded guests in Unregistered history. People are always asking for you, Scott. People love you, man. Your audience is, I was just telling you before we started recording, your audience is the cream of the cream. I mean, they are so hardcore, so devoted to you, so into you, and will do anything for you, it seems. And they are constantly badgering me to have you back on the show. So for me, as someone who loves talking about foreign policy, there's no one better to talk to. It's even though what we talk about is death, it's actually a lot of fun just to get all the knowledge that you can drop, which is just immense. And I think it's, as I've told you and told many people, I don't think there's anyone in the world from our perspective, from any kind of anti-war perspective, who is as broadly knowledgeable about foreign affairs as you are. So it's awesome to have you on.
Well, thanks very much, man. Good to talk to you again. And you're right. My audience, they're a bunch of great guys and gals. No doubt about it.
The best. They're incredible. They're so passionate. Yeah. And thank God someone cares about this stuff, right? Like, since Americans don't generally. Yeah. But so you have a new book out, my man.
Yeah. It's over there.
It's right
Enough
there.
already.
That's right. It's called Enough Already. Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I want you to start. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about Yemen. We're going to talk about the new Biden administration. We're going to talk about NATO. We're going to talk about all that stuff, China, Russia, for sure. But I want you to start by just telling the story of that book, like how it came about.
Well, so back in about 2015 or so, Tom Woods called me and said, let's write a book together. And it'll be sort of the War on Terrorism for Dummies, kind of brief take on all the wars. And I says, yeah, there you go. Like, I knew I was supposed to write a book about something, but I just could never really narrow it down to what exactly I should kind of try to focus on. And then, so that just sounded just right. So I wrote up an outline, but here's what we'll say about each of the wars real quick and send it right over to him. And then, you know, we kept kicking the can down the road, and Tom's just got too many other responsibilities really to make it happen on his side. So the beginning of 2016, I started writing it, and it was supposed to be, you know, a brief take on each of the wars. And then what happened was I got stuck. First of all, chapter 1 was way too long already about, you know, Jimmy Carter through Bill Clinton, getting into this mess. Right. And then after that, chapter 2 was Afghanistan, you know, at the beginning, you know, starting with the coverage of the 21st century wars there. And then that turned into a whole book because, you know, especially once I got past the torture section, I'm like, now this is a torture section within the Afghanistan section, but it's already its own huge thing. And this whole thing, I'm getting like 50,000 words and I'm still in my first chat, you know, first main chapter of the point. And when the hell am I going to get to Iraq, you know, which is way over there and where everybody wants to, where all the action is in the story. So I just decided, hell, it's an Afghanistan book. So I just finished it and then put it out as the book, A Fool's Errand about Afghanistan in 2017. So then I still had the outline of basically what I'd come up with and what I wanted to write of the whole terror war book. And then, so you had me give the presentation for Renegade University in January of 2018 about Afghanistan, and then come back a month later and do another one about the whole terror war.
And by the way, I want to say those were the best attended courses at that time in RU history. People loved it. We had, I forget, the turnout was ridiculous. We had so many people, and you went for 6 hours. I think on both of them, they were 5.5, 6 hours.
Yeah. The first one on Afghanistan, and then the second one on the whole terror war was also out of control.
Legendary webinars, and people. In fact, people were
what I remember most about that is you going, all right, Horton, wrap it up now. We're getting a little long. I gotta go, man. I got things to do. No, so, you know, and so the story with that though was I took that outline and I gave it to your guy who is Tom Woods' old producer, and I don't know what exactly he is to you now, but your friend and
let's name him. No, listen.
Yes, associate. Yeah, AJ Van Slyke. Is it Van Slyke or Von?
Sorry. It's Van.
I'm so sorry. I called him Vaughn on another show. AJ, I'm so sorry. AJ Van Slyke, brilliant genius. Took my ridiculous, you know, completely unorganized mess of an outline and turned it into this brilliant PowerPoint presentation with all great graphics and highly organized. I don't know how to make a PowerPoint at all. If I did, it wouldn't have been like that. I mean, he just killed it on that. And then I just went off of that. And then what a great way to cheat and write a book.
Yeah.
Because what happened was I have this wonderful woman, Joanne in Australia, who's like, yeah, I'll transcribe that for you. I don't give a damn. I don't want your stinking money either. Type the whole thing out. So then I had the rough draft of the book. And then the problem was I thought it was going to be easy. I'm just going to put an edit on this thing. I'm going to put it out. What a great way to cheat and write a book. And then the thing is I cut so much out of chapter 1 when I wrote Fool's Errand. Because remember, chapter 1 in Fool's Errand was supposed to be chapter 1 of this book.
Right.
So it had all this stuff about Iran and all this other stuff in it that I had to cut out. Well, now I've had to restore that, right? And then that comes with all these footnotes and all these things. And so instead of writing the brief Terror War for Dummies book, I started getting bogged down. This time I skipped Afghanistan, but chapter 1 got really long with the Iranian Revolution, the Iran-Iraq War, Iraq War 1, and all this stuff, Iran-Contra and all this crap in there. So it already was huge. And then I skipped Afghanistan because I wasn't sure what to do with Afghanistan. So I said, well, I'll go ahead and get to Iraq. And then my Iraq War 2 chapter started getting totally out of control again. It's like, whenever I read anything, it's just like a fractal. You know what I mean? Every footnote is the whole book full
Oh
of
yeah.
footnotes,
Oh
full
yeah.
of footnotes, full of footnotes forever. And
Yeah.
I can't control it. So what I did was I just quit it cold turkey. I threw the whole damn thing out and started over again. I went back to the transcript and I said, no footnotes, none. Trust me. And I'm not learning any new shit either. This is what I already know. This is what it is. I'm putting it down and there it goes. And then, of course, there's a million citations in the text because I can't help myself. And it didn't turn out to be for dummies 150 pages. It grew to 300 pages anyway, and it's a full book. But it does not. Fool's Errand has, I think, 1,100 footnotes, 1,300 citations, because there's a lot of multiple citations per footnote in a lot of places and stuff. And so therefore the text is riddled with numbers throughout. So if you like that kind of stuff like I do, then rad. But if you don't like that kind of stuff, it could be a real burden. So this one's not like that. This one, I'm told, is much more readable and is a much, easier take on all the wars. And hopefully everybody can, none of this, very little of this, that is secret history, right? Most of it. Your dad knows that we backed Saddam against Iran in the 80s. I'm just reminding him of that. And I'm telling him how that led to the next one, which led to the next one. That's all it is. And, we're putting out this video series now based on the book, directed by this guy, Gus Cantavaro. And so it's me sitting in this chair facing the other way, explaining all this stuff. And then he puts up a slideshow of B-roll footage and great articles and footnotes proving what I'm saying and all of that, right? We've done this kind of collaboration. And I saw so far we put out the first few chapters. We put out Bill Clinton last night. And the first comment on there was, aha, dots connected. Finally. Thank you. Yeah. Right. So I'm not like telling you, the Skull and Bones secret society conspiracy theory thing that you don't know. I'm telling you, look, man, this is how that thing that happened led to this other thing that happened, which led to this other thing that happened. It's just nobody ever really weaved it together for you before in a way. Yeah. So it should be accessible really to everybody who's somewhat familiar with contemporary American Middle East history at all,
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the most shocking stuff that the United States has done in foreign policy, which is mind-blowingly shocking. If you look at all the CIA operations, et cetera, you can find it all in New York Times. Just do a search. You can find it all in the Washington Post. It's all there. It's all in the public. You can find it in the Congressional Record. It's all public information, as you're saying, but it's usually reported many years, sometimes decades after the fact, right? And people no longer care about whatever the atrocity was in 19 whatever, right? But you're right. That is your work. And that's my work too. I mean, a lot of my work is simply pulling together stuff that's already available, but putting it together into a narrative so people can make sense of this chain of events, right? And see causation and see all of that. So yes, let's restate this. Your book is based on a transcript of a Renegade University webinar. And I think we were just talking before we started talking here, before we started recording here, that I think it'd be great to package your book with your courses for Renegade University students and attendees. So I think we'll be doing that soon. So look for that, everyone, for that deal to come, the big Scott Horton omnibus deal. But let's get into some politics, what's going on here. You may be aware we have a new president, although that's disputed. And we got to talk about Yemen, right? Because that's what's happening. And you've said for years that Yemen is the worst atrocity going on in the world. And now Joe Biden has announced, I guess, I mean, I haven't really dug into it. This just happened yesterday, right? He announced that there would be, the wording was really important, I thought. There would be no more offensive or support for offensive operations. Is that how he put it? By the Saudis against the poor people of Yemen. So tell us what's going on there and how you read it.
Honestly, I'm going to be a little bit more charitable about it than you for now.
Okay.
My take is, I'm mildly optimistic, not based on the statement, but based on the overall context of what's going on here. My interpretation of the statement is all that stuff about, still defensive is not really a loophole to keep the war going. What that is covering their flank while they're backing down they're saying, look, it's not like we're throwing our allies, the Saudis, under the bus. We're still going to give them Patriot missiles and Iron Domes and Aegis radars and whatever they need, whatever we can do to help them defend themselves from missile attack and drone attack.
Right.
That way, they're not just dropping the whole thing. Okay. They're being careful about it. That's the way I interpret that. And again, it's not because I'm being charitable toward Biden or Blinken, just in taking overall in the context of how the decision was made and how it comes about. That I think that's how I take that, the part about the defensive role in it.
Right.
When they're talking about ending the offensive role, for now at least, I take that at face value. That means that they are very soon phasing out and ending intelligence and logistic and maintenance support, as well as the rearming, the stopping arms sales of new bombs. Mm-hmm. And now they could do very specific things. I talked with Hassan Al-Tayyab from the Friends Committee earlier, and he was pointing out that they snap their fingers and stop selling tires for the F-15s. F-15s need new tires every time they land, time they land. And so that's it. That's one thing we can do to just turn it off like a switch. And frankly, Biden could say to Mohammed bin Salman and Mohammed bin Zayed from the United Arab Emirates, that's it, boys. We're done. We're the superpower. You're the client state. And not only are we not helping you anymore, we expect you to wrap things up by Thursday. And that's it. And he could do that. And we should be continuing to insist that he does that. He has not done that. And Mike Pompeo, on the way out the door, just 3 weeks ago, a week before he left office, the Secretary of State added the Houthis, the so-called enemy in Yemen, to the terrorist list, which means that no aid groups can provide food aid to anybody under their jurisdiction. Now, the Biden people could have said, well, whatever, Mike Pompeo made that crap up 1 week ago. They could have said this 2 weeks ago. Mike Pompeo made that up 1 week ago. It doesn't mean anything. We hereby rescind it. Instead, they didn't do that. They said, well, we're going to review it and we'll have our answer by the end of the month. Well, if they just ended the war, then this whole Houthis on the terrorist list thing should be an afterthought and easy to cancel immediately. And the aid group screamed bloody murder. And when the Democrats said, no, see, we're reviewing it and it's temporarily suspended and we're providing waivers, they said, no, that's not good enough, dude. By the bylaws of our NGO, we can't intervene somewhere where somebody's even, penciled in on the terrorism list pending review or anything like this. They got to be in the clear. As long as they're even pending review, then we can't do anything to help these people. And this is a huge famine. It's just horrible. And this year's bad as any or worse in this thing. And so, leave it to the Democrats they're doing the right thing. They really are. And look, they're not ending the war. To be real clear about this, they're not ending the war at that. They're switching sides in the war again, back to the other way, which is, it's 99% better than the war they have going on right now. I hate to say that because the war against Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has always been a horror show, and it's going to continue to be a horror show. But man, this war for Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula the last 6 years is the worst thing America. It's as bad as George Bush marching into Iraq in 2003. Right. It's an absolute horror show. And it's the worst thing. And so calling an end to that and switching sides, if not right back to the Houthis, because, our new Secretary of Defense was the head of CENTCOM at the time. He was the one who was backing the Houthis, giving them intelligence to use to kill Al-Qaeda for us there 2 months before Obama and Lloyd Austin stabbed them in the back and turned around and took Al-Qaeda's side against them. But that was, according to Mark Perry, the great Pentagon reporter, that was over Lloyd Austin's dead body. He was so pissed off about that. And he wanted to write a letter to Obama saying, how dare you do this, Mr. President? And then his colleagues talked him out of it. He clicked his heels and obeyed his orders anyway, which is horrifying. But at least he knows who's who over there and cares, and is, as a general, an apolitical general, is a lot more interested in killing Al-Qaeda guys than whoever the Saudis are mad at or whatever, So that's really why I think, and also I should say, I was trying to make excuses for why I think there's a positive spin on this, is that I think there are people in the Obama government who started this war who really wish they hadn't, and who thought, God, what the hell were we doing when they did that? And they all signed this letter. It's easy to sign a letter complaining about it during Donald Trump, of course. But I think they really did have second thoughts about this. And this new guy, Robert Malley, that they've made the new envoy to Iran, he wrote this thing. I quote at length in the book because it's ridiculous in its way, but take it at face value. This thing he wrote in the Atlantic magazine, where he's kind of making excuses for them and saying, geez, we sort of had one little meeting where when I asked my friends about it, none of us remember the meeting the same way when we decided to do this, but we sure thought it was going to be a limited little thing. And here we are 3 years into a genocide, and God dang, is this that same war we started? We wish we hadn't. That kind of spirit of the thing.
Okay.
And then because of the public pressure, all the credit really goes to the Friends Committee on National Legislation, the Quakers, and the Code Pink, and the justforeignpolicy.org, and probably 10, 15 other groups. I interviewed again Hassan El Tayeb from the Friends Committee today, and he listed them all. A real bottom up, absolute, no AstroTurf. No, there's no Yemen lobby, right? There's no powerful Yemeni oil sheiks in America who have an alliance with the Israelis to get things done in Congress or something like that. That's the other side of the war, the Saudis. There's nobody cares about them except just regular people. And regular people are the ones who made this happen for years, have been screaming about it and doing the work on Capitol Hill, banging on doors and saying, we're not done with this yet, Congressman. And they've gotten in the House and in the Senate. They have gotten Democrats and Republicans that they only with the help of Mike Lee and Rand Paul and the good Republicans in the Senate and a few in the House were they able to pass the War Powers Act resolutions to try to force Trump to end the war. Twice they did that. And of course, he vetoed them and continued on anyway. So it is absolutely due to grassroots political pressure from real people demanding an end of this war that all this has happened. And then, yes, it's not over yet, but I'll say one more thing about it is they nominated this guy, I forgot his name, to be the new envoy to solve the problem, to negotiate a peace between Saudi and the Houthis too. So it's not just we're backing off, but we're also sending our negotiator to try to bring these guys to the table to end it. So I think, of course, I prefer everybody just quit everything, but I'm just saying that's an indication that this is a serious effort here.
Okay. So I'm provisionally happy about it.
Okay.
But
good. Me too. That's the right way to put it.
But always
provisionally happy.
Always skeptical as hell, especially when it's Tony Blinken running the show. I have had very serious sleep issues since I was about 6 years old, believe it or not. I am a lifelong insomniac. And I wish that I had known about two things back then. Of course, they weren't really available then. CBD and melatonin. Paloma Verde CBD, our wonderful sponsor, is now offering an incredible deal on their CBD melatonin mix. You get one free. You buy one, and you get another one for free. So go to palomaverdestore.com and do that, get that deal. But if you use the discount code RENEGADE, you get 25% off every single thing in their store, including the CBD melatonin hybrid that they have. Incredible product, so helpful, life-saving, really, for many people. So Paloma Verde is giving us 25% off every product. They've also put together my 3 favorite products into what's called the Unregistered Combo Pack, otherwise known as the THAAD Pack. You're not required to call it that, but it does help me in my times of ego need. In the combo pack, you get their gummies, incredibly delicious, many fruit flavors, 10 milligrams of CBD per gummy. I love these things and run out of them all the time, as many of you have heard me say. Soft gels. This is the big time medicine. 25 milligrams of CBD per soft gel. I take 2 to 6 depending on how big the assholes in my world are. That's mostly just people on the street, by the way. It's not people I actually know who are assholes to me. And the most effective thing for me is their high potency tincture, especially at bedtime. A few drops under my tongue definitely helps me get a good night's sleep. Helps reduce anxiety also. I love this stuff. Use it all the time. So go to palomaverdestore.com, use the discount code RENEGADE, check out that CBD melatonin deal, get 25% off by using the discount code RENEGADE, make your body feel better, make your life feel better, and I thank you. So let's do some teaching right now, because Yemen, I mean, the whole Middle East is hard for people to understand. Yemen in particular is hard for people to understand. Let's do the history of this real quick, so people know what we're talking about. Those who haven't followed this, which is most people, actually, even political people don't know what's going on in Yemen. I mean, I don't blame them, because it's extremely hard to figure out, but
it is. It's a mess.
Yeah,
I can do it though.
I know you can.
Here's how it goes.
I know you can.
Here's how it goes. Okay, so we're talking about the Arabian Peninsula, which is obviously everybody in your mind's eye. It's harshly tilted toward the northwest there, Persian Gulf on the east side and Iran on the other side of that. And on the west side, the Red Sea and Africa on the other side of that, right? And so we're talking about the very southwest corner there in Yemen. And for that matter, we're only talking about the western half of that, because virtually the entire eastern half of the country is worthless desert anyway.
Right.
So even though the rectangle is long ways, on its side, we're really just talking about a square on the left half of Yemen, if that makes sense.
But
it makes it easier because there's a lot of north, south, and middle of the country coming up. But you should just picture a square little country on the very southwest corner of the Arabian Peninsula. That's where we're talking about. Go ahead.
However, I believe every ship carrying oil from the Persian Gulf to Europe goes right through there, goes right past the coast of Yemen. Am I right?
That's true. Yeah. Although nobody's threatening shipping there other than in somebody's imagination if they need an excuse.
No, but
it is an important choke point.
Yes, exactly. That's what I want to get.
A potential one.
That's why we care. That's why people care about Yemen, is because it's right next to all the oil and the shipping lanes that take the oil out. So okay, continue. That's great so far.
Yeah, man. Okay, so 30 years ago, end of the Cold War, a dictator named Abdullah Saleh unites Yemen. It had been north and south, and the commies in the south. But now without the Soviets, basically they had a new compromise and came together. And this guy ruled with American support for about 30 years. Now, in 2009, Obama comes into power and says to the CIA, unlike invading secular dictatorships, which didn't attack us, we want to focus on Al-Qaeda. We'll go after secular dictators in 2 years, but not yet. This is still his first year, 2009.
Right.
So he says to the CIA, gloves off on the drone war in Pakistan and in Yemen. And then the deal they made with Abdullah Saleh in Yemen, which the capital city, Sana'a, is right about in the middle of the country there. And the deal was, you let us kill Al-Qaeda in the south, in the southeast kind of area of the country, then we'll give you a bunch of money and guns. And so he says, okay, go ahead and kill him. So they waged their drone war. Now, it's almost an aside at this point in the story, but the drone war was horrible and counterproductive and only made Al-Qaeda worse and worse, because a drone is not a scalpel and a 500-pound bomb is not a surgical strike. It is a weapon of mass destruction if you're on the receiving end of it, and it's your family, your wedding that's getting bombed, your neighborhood, your school that's getting bombed by these people, right? So it just made Al-Qaeda more and more powerful the more Obama went after him. And I should say here that Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula are real ass Al-Qaeda. These guys, their core were veterans of the Afghan war. They're closely associated with Osama bin Laden. They bombed the Cole in the year 2000. They helped to coordinate the September 11th attack. They tried to blow up a plane over Detroit with the underpants bomb on Christmas Day 2009. They did the Charlie Hebdo attack in France and one or two of the other massacres in France. I forget if it was Nice or the other Paris attack that they did. So these are real ass dangerous Al-Qaeda guys. Okay. Not just like, oh, Al-Shabaab says, yeah, we're Al-Qaeda because they got a sack of money from the Saudis to say so. That doesn't count. That's like an FBI entrapment. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real friends of Osama in this case. All right. So America gives all the money and guns to Saleh as a bribe to let us bomb Al-Qaeda counterproductively in the South.
Got it.
Saleh takes all the money and guns, and he goes to war against a group of Zaidi Shiites in the north of the country called the Houthis. And that's a family name, a tribal designation, and a political designation. The religious designation is Zaidi Shia, different than the so-called Twelvers in Iran, closer to Sunnis and pray side by side with Sunnis and stuff. But a different sect there in the north. And he attacks them over and over again, 6 times with American money and guns. And every time he does, they grow more and more powerful in response, just like us bombing Al Qaeda. It's just counterproductive.
Right.
He's rallying more and more people to their cause, and they're growing more and more powerful as a force.
Right.
By the way, he's playing a double game against the Americans, and he's backing Al Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood as auxiliaries to his army to use against the Houthis. At the same time, he's letting us bomb them. And then triple game, and this is in the book, he was also backing the Houthis and giving weapons to his enemies, the Houthis, for use against his own army and the Muslim Brotherhood, because they were getting a little bit too big for their britches too. And he wanted to wear them out a bit. And maybe that had a bit to do with him losing six times.
Wow.
But so you think the curved daggers of American politics are sharp. This is how they do business in Yemen. Okay. So anyway, then comes the Arab Spring. Right. Chelsea Manning leaks the thing and there's a riot in Tunisia. Guy sets himself on fire. The next thing you know, they overthrow the government in Egypt. And every Arab in the world says, wow, you can do that. Let's try that. And go outside and try to overthrow their dictator. Right. So they all converge on Sana'a, the capital city. And everybody agrees on one thing. This guy Salah's got to go. And there's all kinds of plans for commerce. There's so many tribes and factions and whatever. Nobody believes they can dominate everybody else, right? Everybody is trying to make deals here. And so, man, if America just stayed the hell out of it, that it might have been okay, you know? But no, so that's not how it happened. Somebody tried to kill Salah. And while he was in the hospital in Saudi Arabia, Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State, made a deal with the Saudis. And they came in and officially did this soft coup. And in other words, instead of letting the people of Yemen do it, they forced him out and put their weight behind his vice president, a guy named Mansour Hadi.
Okay.
All right. You want to catch up on anything? Go ahead.
Yeah. The soft coup. Like, what was that? Was that the CIA directed or CIA assisted? What was that? How did that go down?
I think the Saudis handled it. I mean,
okay,
they kept him out of town long enough for the Americans to, and I don't know, that's actually a good question about the degree to which the CIA came in and put money in all the right pockets and whatever to make sure that Hadi stayed in power. But here's the thing about it is when Saleh came home, well, first of all, Hadi never had the alliance of interests and factions that his predecessor, Saleh, I mean, did I say Hadi or Saleh? Hadi never had it together the way Saleh did, right? The successor never had it together. Yeah. And so when Abdullah comes home, he doesn't retire to Mount Vernon and a quiet life of study like Mullah Omar or something like that. He takes his army with him and says, oh, yeah, well, you can't fire me. I quit, pal. And he takes 2/3 or more of the army with him. And guess what? He goes and joins with the Houthis in the north because it turns out he's a Zaidi Shiite all along. Even though he's not a Houthi, he's still sort of kind of with them. Okay. So he goes and he makes an alliance with them and starts coming south. And now, meanwhile, Hadi is terrible at being a dictator. He stays past his term. First of all, they hold a one-man election. Everybody Google this, put it in your Google images. You'll find the NPR news story about it, where they held an election, Thad, with one man and one name and one oval on the ballot to fill in. And Hillary Clinton declared that this is the invention of Yemeni democracy, finally heralding a new day for the one man. Just put in Hadi ballot. It'll come right up in your Google images there. And so then he promised to hold real elections, never did, postponed them, ended the gasoline ration. So the price went up, 100% or more, whatever it was, instituted this strong federalism program, which essentially cut the Houthis off from the Red Sea. And so that was their final straw. Oh. And at the end of 2014, everybody still with me? End of 2014, the Houthis are mad. They come down and they take over the capital city of Sana'a. They roust Hadi out, and it's the Houthi Abdullah alliance that comes and takes over the capital city again. And I guess really with the Houthis in the driver's seat, but he's still, definitely a partner.
And that was 2014, right?
Yes, very end of 2014, very beginning of 2015. And they drive Hadi down to the port city of Aden, where the coal was bombed and where the socialist Southern Transitional Council is dominant there, by the way. And they'll come into this a little bit, at least later. And they eventually drive him all the way out of the country. They take Aiden for a short time. They drive him out of the country. He's been living in a hotel on house arrest in Riyadh this whole time, man. They call him the government. Oh, he's the internationally recognized government of the country. That guy's not the government in any more than you or I are the government of Yemen. Is Houthi the government of Yemen? It's a complete joke. And in fact, even just yesterday, I was making fun of this on Twitter that, you know, even now after they're announcing the end of the war, we're still at foreignpolicy.com calling the Houthis the Houthi rebels, even though they took over the capital city and declared themselves the sovereigns with no real competitors
6 years ago.
6 years ago. 6 years ago. They're the Houthi rebels. And who are they fighting? They don't even pretend in the article that they're fighting against, you know, the Yemeni government, which is just some guy sitting in a hotel in Riyadh. They don't even pretend that in the article. Well, they're fighting against the Saudis and the UAE. So the guys who rule the capital city for 6 years are rebels.
Right.
And then, so what does that make the Saudis and the UAE? The sovereign government of Yemen? Is that what we're talking about here?
Right.
The whole thing, the way they construct it doesn't make any sense but there's like some black magic blood oath that you're not allowed to ever refer to the Houthis without calling them rebels. I mean, I don't know why. I don't know how they enforce this. I mean, my theory yesterday on Twitter was it must be a threat to withhold brunch invitations or something from these people. I don't know what they do to blackmail them. No matter how long these people are, I'm not saying they're elected, right? I'm just saying they're in charge. It is what it is. Well, Abdullah wasn't elected either. You didn't dispute. He wasn't the rebels for 30 years. He was the dictator of the country. And here we're talking about the same guy again, back in power, only with some friends.
Okay, so
you know?
Why did the U.S. foreign policy establishment not like the Houthis at that point? Because they were too close, maybe, with the Iranians? Is that it?
Well, you're just wrong, Thad. The American foreign policy establishment loved the Houthis at that point. General Lloyd Austin at CENTCOM said, "Great, these guys like killing Al Qaeda guys. We can work with them." No, but why you're getting ahead of it? No, son. You're ahead of the game by 2 months. Okay, the Great Betrayal comes in March.
Okay.
In January of 2015, General Lloyd Austin, the commander of CENTCOM, says, "Hey, you know how the Al Qaeda guys want to kill all you dead?" And then they say, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, how about we help you kill them instead?" And they said, "Let's do that. Great." And it's in the Wall Street Journal on January the 28th. And I think one day prior, Barbara Slavin wrote it in Al Monitor. And in fact, her story is even better than the Wall Street Journal article because she's covering an Atlantic Council conference where the Deputy Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Michael Vickers, comes and gives a whole presentation and explains, yeah, man, we are sharing intelligence with the Houthis because they're killing Al Qaeda guys. So this is why when 2 months later, Obama turns around and takes Al Qaeda's side against them,
right?
It was General Lloyd Austin and his men.
Okay. They
were the ones who were talking to Mark Perry. And I interviewed Mark Perry in March of 2015 because he wrote a piece for Al Jazeera about how all the generals at CENTCOM are screaming mad about this. And he was talking about Lloyd Austin. He was saying, you know, forget a drone strike. We got guys who have real incentive to kill these Al Qaeda guys for us. All we got to do is just help them. Like we're passing them intel. We don't even have to arm them. They can handle it for us. This is the best solution to AQAP we've got going. Right. And then now Mark Perry has a follow-up article in Foreign Policy. Lloyd Austin's not who you think he is, from just a few weeks ago, where he says, yeah, you know, remember when I was saying the generals were mad? This is the guy I was talking about. And what he did was apparently he was going to write a letter to the president cussing him out. And the other generals stopped him from doing it. And then, of course, he clicked his heels and went along and prosecuted the war. And that's bad. But like I was saying before, that's a reason to believe that he might go back to his preferred policy if he can convince Biden to do it. That, like, you know, Mr. President, we were helping the Houthis kill Al Qaeda right before we turned this thing around. We could go back to that if we had it my way, kind of thing. Seems like a reasonable thing that he might say to Biden. And then, of course, there's all this other pressure on him to end the war against the Houthis. Okay. And after all, these are the guys that bombed the Cole and tried to bomb a plane over Detroit and help organize the September 11th attack. They're the enemy, not the Houthis. The
So,
Houthis never did anything to us. And now that was your question. So why are we mad at them then,
yeah,
right?
motivation. I want to get at motivation for all of this by
Well,
the
the
U.S.
Saudis don't like them.
Okay,
That's all.
that's it. Yeah, right.
That's it.
Right.
And so, and not only that, but public choice theory. That's what they call it. And I should really read all about this from all those guys who wrote about it. I might be using these terms wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this is what that means. There's no such thing as the national interest, not in America, not in Saudi Arabia. There's just individual men's interests inside their bureaucracy to do what's good for them. And so that means in this case, the brand new 29-year-old defense minister and deputy crown prince Mohammed bin Salman needed a war to make himself a man. And so that was what he did, is he launched this war, and Obama helped him do it. And it worked. It raised his profile enough. He was able to arrest and marginalize his cousin Mohammed bin Nayef, who was the crown prince, and name himself crown prince. And he is now the de facto king of Saudi Arabia. It worked just fine for him.
Right, because the Saudis, along with Israel, help us secure the Middle East, basically. They're our principal partner in doing that.
That's right.
Correct?
Yep.
Yep, right. Okay, and Iran and the Houthis are Shia. And, right, were they, I mean, I've heard you say no in the past, but isn't it true that they got some help from Iran?
Yeah, but like only enough that you can say it that way, right? There's nothing. So look, the whole place been under a complete blockade this whole time. There's no planes landing at the Sana'a airport, and there's no Iranian ships pulling into port. Well, and all the worst accusations against them were already debunked by Gareth the Great, man. You have to believe in this crap. Oh, look, we found a boat full of guns. But the boat full of guns was leaving Yemen on its way to Somalia, because Yemen is so lousy with weapons that they're still exporting in the middle of a war.
Okay.
So wait, that's not Iran arming the Yemenis. That's just a claim of Iran arming the Yemenis, and that's different.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Houthis are their mission is primarily to drive Saudi Arabia out of their world. I mean, out of their lives, right? To get the great oppressor off their backs, right?
Yeah. And where are they getting their arms? And they're allied with the Yemeni army.
Okay.
You know, a lot of these arms are the same hundreds of tons of weapons that Obama gave them.
Okay.
And meanwhile, they've had a military all this time. It's not like they're starting from scratch. And by the way, the average gentleman in Yemen has an AK-47.
Yeah.
They're better armed than Texans. It's part of their culture.
I'm trying to get in the head of Anthony Blinken. And people
good luck with that.
Yeah, right. Well, I think I can. I mean, he's my age. I've known so many guys exactly like him. I went to grad school with like hundreds of Anthony Blinkens. So, I mean, their fear, I guess, is that if the Houthis, I mean, I'm guessing here, if the Houthis retained control of the country, maintain their control of the country, they could form one, and we normalized them, most importantly, stop the blockade, let them do business as normal, like a regular nation state. It would just now be a Houthi-run nation state. They might very well, Scott Horton, I'm asking you, might very well align themselves with Iran. And there you have, and then you have, you know, the big alliance of Iran and Russia has a new partner right next to where the oil is shipped.
But if there's any truth to that at all, Thad, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because here, these guys, they're not the Iranian cat's paws. You know, the theory, basically, step one in your bogus theory is, because Shiite. And then, and you didn't say that, but that's what the Hawks say. Yeah. But that's just garbage, right? I mean, look, you and me are pals and have a lot in common, but that doesn't mean that either of us are in charge of the other, does it? I mean, what are we talking about here? Right. They act as though Iran has all of this influence, but where is it? Okay. They act like Iran has, well, you got to admit, they support them. I mean, okay, kind of, but like in what way? PayPal? Or they give them like in the slightest amount of light arms or what? Show me where the Iranians had a barge full of tanks that they parked somewhere to deliver to the Houthis, right? What level of material support is even possible in this circumstance? And why should the Houthis be incentivized to give away any of their authority, which, by the way, Abdullah tried to stab them in the back in December 2017 and make a deal with the Saudis, and they killed him first. So he's out of the picture. Now it's just them. But what incentive do they have to let the IRGC take over their country? What incentive do they have to empower the Ayatollah over themselves? None. whatsoever, other than in the make-believe ideas of the hawks at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and the Likud party in Tel Aviv.
All right.
So, but in real life, the degree to which they are friendly with and or dependent on Iran has only increased because of the war and since the war began.
Sure.
So same reason we intervene in Syria. Oh, we got to break this alliance between Assad and Iran. Well, they were friends. Now Assad is completely dependent on Iran for his security. Good job, guys.
So Saudi motivation. So Iran and Saudi Arabia are the principal adversaries in the Middle East, right? Iran is the principal adversary for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia as a government is very concerned about the whole region going Shia run by Iran, right? That's their main concern. They want to stop that from happening, right? So are you saying that the Saudi government, in launching this war against Yemen, these piss poor people, right? Isn't it the poorest country like in the entire hemisphere or something like that, right? With no conceivable, I mean, the military is pathetic, et cetera. Like, are you saying the Saudi government was just paranoid, or it sounded like you're saying is because MBS, this 29-year-old dictator who took over control of the Saudi government, just wanted to have a fun war because to prove his manhood? I mean, which is it?
I think that's, well, all these things kind of come into play. But, another part of it was, as the Bush people explain, or pardon me, the Obama people, they all look alike to me. As they told the New York Times, that the Saudis were upset that they were signing the nuclear deal with Iran.
Right.
Because, and which that ought to sound strange to people. I'm not sure if it does. But if America's signing a nuclear deal with Iran to lock down Iran's nuclear program and keep it civilian and prevent it from being a weapons program, then why shouldn't the Saudis be celebrating in the streets over that if we're securing their military security interests? The answer is because they never were making nukes. That was all a hoax cooked up in Tel Aviv. The Saudis never thought they were making nukes. I never thought they were making nukes because they weren't making nukes. That was a bunch of lies, and it was lies enough that they could have started a war over it. And so the JCPOA was meant not to prevent Iran from making nuclear weapons, but to put the lie to bed that they're even close or trying at all. Because now, for whatever reason, the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the Safeguards Agreement and those inspections were deemed to not be good enough. Now we've got the additional protocol to the Safeguards Agreement. Now we've got the subsidiary arrangements. Now we have the Iranian nuclear program locked down under an inspection regime beyond any in history, right? So now the hoax is over. They never were making nukes, but now you can't even tell the lie anymore because no one will believe it, because we just know so perfectly better the opposite, right?
I'm going to keep pushing you. I'm going to keep pushing.
Right.
Okay. So,
well, no, they try, but it doesn't fly because everybody knows better. Everybody knows better. So
hold on. Wait, let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So Israel's concerned, right?
Wait, get back to Israel in a second. But Saudi was not concerned about an Iranian bomb. Saudi was concerned that if we made a deal with Iran that ratchets down all this tension, then, hey, maybe we'll tilt back toward Iran. America was best friends with Iran for 25 years after, the coup of 53 and all that. We used them to balance against the Arabs. And hey, if Obama's going to start palling around with the Ayatollah, then maybe he's going to sacrifice Saudi Arabia's role, as you put it, as our principal agent in the American order in the Middle East. Right. And they wanted to prevent that. And so they went to the Obama people screaming and crying and saying, if you're not about to betray us and become best friends with the Ayatollah, then prove it by bombing the Houthis with us. And Obama said, sure. And you read that in the New York Times. As you said, all this war stuff is right there in the New York Times. The headline is Obama's quiet support for Saudis in Yemen, whatever. And then here's the phrases to Google, put them in direct quotes, that they know that the war will be long, bloody, and indecisive.
Yep.
Long, bloody, and indecisive, meaning they don't know what victory is supposed to look like or how to get from here to there, but they're starting it anyway, god dang it. And bloody, meaning, they're going to kill innocent people.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands of them. And they know that it's going nowhere, but they have same paragraph, man, not same article, same paragraph. Even though it's going to be long, bloody, and indecisive, they have to do it anyway to placate the Saudis after the nuclear deal with Iran.
It's an amazing article in the New York Times. You and I have talked about it many times, this one article, and because it talks about the debate going on within the Obama cabinet around whether to support Saudi's genocidal attack on Yemen. And as I recall, I haven't read it in a few months now, but as I recall, basically the entire cabinet was behind it, I think, except for one person, who was Joe Biden. Am I right? I think Biden opposed it, at least.
I'd have to go back and look. I can't testify to that.
I don't know how strongly he opposed it, but I think he wasn't into it. He wasn't so excited about it, which would be the first war since Vietnam that he didn't support, by the way. But okay,
I think they say he was good on Libya too, in the debate over Libya.
Right. That's right. Yeah. For some odd reason, I don't know why, but
I've never seen anywhere, Thad, by the way, if you know this, I'd like to know, but I've never seen anyone make a claim one way or the other about his position on intervention in Syria. I only know about his Harvard speech years after the fact, where he essentially sounds like he's vindicating himself, saying, see, I was right, but I'm not sure.
Well, we know damn well what his people think about Syria.
Yeah, no question about that. Although, he differed with Blinken. He differed with Blinken over Libya. And at that time, Sullivan was Hillary's man, not his.
That's true. But is Joe Biden really going to run foreign policy? I kind of doubt it. Himself, I don't think he can run much, and he's got his hands full with chasing domestic terrorists now. So.
It sure is an interesting question, man. I gotta say, one thing is that, this is something that Mark Perry pointed out. Tony Blinken is Biden's man. Yeah. Tony Blinken don't have opinions. Tony Blinken's here to do what the boss says, period. Right. Sullivan is more of his own hawk, probably comes from Hillary Clinton's staff and was just, horrible. I think he ended up working for Biden after Hillary left. Right. Mm-hmm. But both of these guys are really, his guys, especially Blinken, and Biden himself. I don't know. Obviously, people say, oh, he's just a figurehead or whatever. Well, he's a figurehead in the sense that that's certainly how he got the job. He's good old reliable Joe Biden, the banker and the arms dealer's man and all of that. No question about that. But that doesn't mean he's getting secret phone calls on the green phone from the Trilateral Commission or whatever, overruling him. Right. He's the one who decides when his staff can't decide. And that's the job of the president, right? Whoever it is. Yeah. And this is a guy who has wanted to sit in that chair his entire life long. He's not one of these guys who later in life thought, well, maybe I could do it. It's his life's ambition to sit in that chair. I don't see any reason, even if he's tired and taking a nap, I don't think that means that he's in a big hurry to delegate all of his power to everybody else to make all the choices. And I don't think that he's wise or good. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me, but I do think that he has been burned as hell from experience, and particularly on the Iraq war. He opposed the Iraq surge too. He was cured of it by 2006 and 2007. Oh. And, that was before his son died. And now he knows. And I know he knows. I forgot how I know this anymore, but I had read somewhere that it took until Joseph Hickman, Sergeant Joseph Hickman, who, by the way, is already a hero for exposing the CIA murder of 3 men at Guantanamo Bay in 2006. Wow. He also wrote a book called The Burn Pits. And in that book, Beau Biden gets a whole chapter that this is how my man got brain cancer. He was stationed. I'm almost certain of this, that I'd have to go back, but I think it was at the Mosul Dam. And at his base had this massive burn pit where they just take any old, whatever you got, old munitions and computers and who knows what, and just douse it all in diesel and burn it. And so many guys got cancer and all different sicknesses from that. And it's almost certainly where Beau Biden got his cancer. And this is his good son. He lost his wife and his daughter. He's got his 2 boys left. One of his boys is a worthless scumbag. The other one is a decent kid, especially from Joe's point of view, was, I think, the Attorney General of Delaware, right? A high achieving guy, went to serve his country. He's probably one of the only senator's boys, maybe the only senator's son who went over there on the whole damn thing.
Right.
And then he died in the thing. And Joe was not just a Democrat who voted for the war. People go, well, Joe supported the war. Well, I'll recommend you go back and read your Raimondo. He was W. Bush's handmaiden in the Senate. He was the
sir.
whip in the Senate who made the Democrat leaders vote for that war. In the House, they didn't. In the House, Pelosi, to her credit, the Democrats voted against it with a few exceptions. And the Republicans, only 5 exceptions: Ron Paul, Jimmy Duncan, and just a couple of others, 2-3 others. But the Democrats were almost unanimously against it in the House. But in the Senate, it was Biden and Kerry and Hillary who led the thing. And Biden was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And I'm not saying he's a deep guy or a decent guy, but he's a decent enough guy that he knows that it's his fault that his son is dead. He can't ignore that. He can't blame that on somebody else. He can't pretend that that's George Bush's fault. He remembers 2002 just as good as well as I do. And he knows. And so what does that do to a guy? You know, he's got to be burned by that. So I don't know if you call that wisdom or not, but like, man, I touched a stove and burned the hell out of my hand. And he's done this over and over again, man. He's so old now. Like, what mistakes does he have left that he hadn't already made to correct now? You know? It's like on the war on drugs. What's he going to do? Crack down on black people? Like, we already tried that, man. You know, we're going to have to do something else.
It was his idea to crack down on black people.
Yeah. When I say we already tried it, I mean this guy.
Yeah, right.
So, you know,
responsible for killing his own son. Joe Biden. Damn.
And he knows it too, because I read somewhere that someone told him, you know, your son has a whole chapter in this book about the burn pits. And he went, oh my God, really? And read it. So, you know,
Wait, who read it?
The father,
Biden?
The president.
He read that chapter?
He read the book. Yeah, he knows.
Oh, really?
I'm sorry. I should go back and find this footnote. I brought this up a couple times. I don't remember my source anymore, but I know that from somewhere.
Wow.
That this, you know, the burn pit story was huge. I mean, Kelly Vlahos at the American Conservative Magazine for years wrote and championed this story heroically. And Jon Stewart from The Daily Show has now made a cause celeb out of it. It's sort of his next step after the first responders from 9/11 that's sticking up for them.
Okay.
Now he's going on to the burn pit victims because it's Gulf War II illness, right? Iraq War II illness. And what are we going to do? We're going to call it a syndrome and pretend it ain't real because these guys are dropping dead of brain cancer, for God's sake, or somebody's going to care enough to pay attention to do something about trying to help them.
So are you saying,
you know? And finally, this came to Joe's attention at some point.
You think because of this, that Joe Biden is less likely to start a new war?
Well, that, and also we don't have anybody else to attack at this point who can not hit back. I mean, he's not going to attack Iran. I keep seeing people say he's going to start a war with Iran. No. Now, Israel might force him into one somehow by starting the war, but I even give that I don't think they're going to do that.
I don't know, man. Syria, Biden has really never made a public statement about Syria himself.
No. Well, he's got a great one at Harvard years later where he blames everything on our allies, but he tells the story otherwise. He doesn't say, Obama said they could do it, and Petraeus and Brennan helped them do it the whole time, et cetera. He doesn't talk about that, but he says Saudi and Qatar and Turkey, they've poured all their money and all their guns in. But guess what, folks? It all went to Al-Qaeda. It all went to Arar al-Sham. It all went to ISIS. It all went to the jihadists. And then it built the Islamic State and a giant goddamn thing. Hell, I'll pull it up right now and play the clip if you want to hear it, man. It's just like a minute long or something.
You're making Joe Biden sound better and better. Are you sure you're Scott Horton? I don't know.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've always hated the guy's guts. I mean, he doesn't have redeeming qualities or anything like that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I hear you.
In the scheme of things, you can only make the same screw up so many times, and he's already made all of them, right? And then look, okay, let's presume for the sake of argument that he was as hesitant on Syria as he was on Libya.
Okay.
Certainly on Libya, he's vindicated. I told you guys not to do that. Now, attitude follows behavior. You get something right and, make a prediction, and then you're right. Then you're like, hell yeah, see? It happens to me all the time, Thad, right? So same thing with him here. Now, presume he did the same thing on Syria. I don't know, Barack. I think you should tread lightly here, pal. These kind of bad guys in Al-Qaeda in Iraq doing the suicide bomb, and I don't know, man. And then look what happened. It was the worst thing you could have possibly come up with. You can make up this shit where they really created an Islamo-fascist caliphate, like in Glenn Beck's ridiculous garbage from 2004, when the entire world was carved up by nation states. Where are you going to put your caliphate, dumb? There are countries in the way. And then what did Obama do? He goes in and he erases the countries and creates a caliphate for these guys. Now, presuming that Biden had said, geez, I don't know, boss, then he sure sounds vindicated when you listen to him. He doesn't quite say, I told you all along. But if you see, you want me to pull it up? It'll just take a second.
Okay. I can believe that.
Let's listen to it. It's fun.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.
Biden at Harvard, man.
Do it. You're going to read it?
Nah, I'm going to play it.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, I can.
So that people can hear it.
Oh, he had to apologize because he hurt Turkey's feelings. All right, here's the clip.
Joe Biden, the Peacenik by Scott Horton. This is your next op-ed.
Hey man, we're grading on there's a few different curves here. Next, we'll talk about how he's going to get us all killed in a nuclear war with Russia. Okay,
I was going to say that's what you just tweeted that yesterday or something, right?
Yeah.
How he's going to
this morning.
Our biggest problem is our allies.
Oh yeah, no. So this is it. Check this out now.
Ally, what my constant cry was that our biggest problem is our allies. Our allies in the region were our largest problem in Syria. The Turks were great friends, and I have a great relationship with Erdogan, which I just spent a lot of time with. The Saudis, the Emiratis, etc. What were they doing? They were so determined to take down Assad and essentially have a proxy Sunni-Shia war. What did they do? They poured hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadis coming from other parts of the world.
Amazing.
Now you think I'm exaggerating? Take a look. Where did all of this go? So now what's happening? All of a sudden, everybody's awakened because this outfit called ISIL, which was Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which when they were essentially thrown out of Iraq, found open space and territory in eastern Syria, worked with al-Nusra, who we declared a terrorist group early on, and we could not convince our colleagues to stop supplying them. So what happened? Now all of a sudden, I don't want to be too facetious, but they have seen the Lord. Now the president's been able to put together a coalition of our Sunni neighbors, because America can't once again go in to a Muslim nation and be the aggressor. It has to be led by Sunnis.
And so in this part, he's going off the rails. And of course, that's not right that the Sunnis led. What he's referring to there is now they've seen the light because now they've created the caliphate. Yeah. This is after the caliphate in Western Iraq has fallen.
That's insane. That's Joe Biden sounding like Scott Horton. That's like exactly that's your show right there. Like he must be listening to your show. That is the basic analysis that your guests and you have about what?
That's what happened.
When was that? When was that?
So this would have been in, I'm not sure the exact date, but it's the summer of 2014, or it's still in 2014. It's just a few months. And this blog post is from November 2014. But it's just a couple of months after the fall of Western Iraq and the declaration of the caliphate in 2014. So when he's saying, oh, now they've seen the light, he's saying now the Turks are going to stop backing them and the Saudis are going to stop backing them. That wasn't really true. And the part at the end where he goes, and now we got to let our Sunni allies take the lead in fighting them. Oh, yeah, really? What? Turkey and Saudi and Jordan are going to invade Western Iraq to destroy ISIS? No. Right. America backed the Shiites again. The Iraqi Shiites they wish they hadn't fought Iraq War II for, which was why they were backing al-Qaeda in Syria against Assad, was to try to make up for their screw up in Iraq War II. Now they're back to fighting for the same Shiites again, and the Iranians as well, flying as Iran's Air Force, especially in the Battle of Tikrit. You had Iran running the battle on the ground and the U.S. Air Force flying as their cover to destroy the Islamic State for them in that war. And so that's him admitting that. How did all this happen? It all got out of control. All our allies poured all this money in. ISIS got them. They turned into the Islamic State.
But then his president, when he was vice president, Obama then doubled down on the policy of supporting anybody who was against Assad, and we got more and more Al-Qaeda and more war.
I mean, and that's what's great about the whole thing too. And honestly, man, I got to tell you, I this is probably some kind of disorder of mine or whatever. I'm sitting here rereading my same book that I wrote, and I already know what's in there a million times. It's a transcript of a thing I said 3 years ago. What, 4? Yeah, 3 years ago now. Yeah. Man, I get so angry reading this shit. It's unbelievable because even after, okay, it's June of 2014. Well, June of 2013, they create the Islamic State in eastern Syria and consolidate Raqqa, and everything south of Syrian Kurdistan belongs to them in the entire eastern half of the country. Right. Mostly desert, but still, hey, they control all of it. And then a year later, they roll completely into Western Iraq and take over the entire thing. And now I completely lost my train of thought and forgot what the hell point I was making. I'm sorry.
Pissed off.
Oh yeah, no, because so then Obama starts bombing them in August of 2014. Thank you for saving me there. Yeah. Obama starts the war against them in 2014, in August 2014. They're threatening our allies in Baghdad and in Erbil, the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan, right? But he doesn't call off CIA support for the other terrorists in Syria ever. Right. And so the whole time, even after support for Al-Qaeda in Syria has blown up into the entire Islamic State, that was, whoa, a bridge too far. And now we got to bomb the hell out of that. We're still backing them all through 2014 and 15 and 16.
Yeah.
And not until the summer of 2017 does Donald Trump call an end to this support. So you can see, for example, where in the city of Palmyra in southern Syria, which got a lot of attention because there's these ancient Roman ruins there and all of this stuff. ISIS didn't roll in there and take it until the spring of 2015. So America was already bombing the hell out of the Islamic State for 3/4 of a year. We were at war with the Islamic State Caliphate for 3/4 of a year, Thad, before they rolled into Palmyra. And then what they do? Sit back and let ISIS take Palmyra. Why? Because it hurts Assad. And it means that there's more pressure on Assad here, which means that he can't resist American CIA support for Al-Qaeda and Ahrar al-Sham fighting in the Idlib province at the same time. This is high treason, makes Benedict Arnold look like George Washington. This is unbelievable. And it's true. And it just kept going and kept going. And they make George W. Bush look like a hero here.
That's a statement. Yeah. I mean, the United States was arming Al-Qaeda, like, period. That's all.
And Joe Biden was the vice president during all of this.
That's right.
I mean, he could have bludgeoned the president. He could have resigned. He could have done something. He could have on TV screamed in the president's face, "Damn it, man, we're on the wrong side of this war." And he didn't do any of that.
Come on, man.
The president wisely. It was a secret.
Okay. So I
mean, if it was you or me, wouldn't you rather stab yourself in the gut than go along with something like that? Because I would have.
Yeah, but
I'm the vice president of the United States. Watch me commit harikari before I support the al-Nusra Front.
Scott,
the guys.
You and I are not lifelong politicians.
Well, yeah, no, that's right.
Hello. Joe Biden has lived his entire life to gain office, to gain the next office up, right? That's what he's lived for.
But you know, again, back to how much he knows about this, right? You hear him go, look, al-Nusra is just Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
It was awesome.
Well, yeah, man. But then how do you say anything else after that? Like, isn't that the only point? Al-Nusra is Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
All right, hold on.
That's the end of the argument.
By the new president's head. Okay, so right now, that was an amazing. I did not know he gave that speech. That's an incredible speech. He nailed it. That was like not only like the
I
right.
bet I'm going blue now. Here, let me turn that off.
No, you're good. Not only was it the right position he was taking on Syria, but he had a very sophisticated analysis of it.
Right.
He sounded like you. Okay. He also had your position on Libya. He was against the bombing of Libya. I am pretty sure that in that New York Times article in 2015 about Yemen, I'm pretty sure he was the only person in the cabinet who was opposed to that intervention too.
Okay.
Now, Okay. I mean, it's just that until that time, he supported every military intervention in American history from Vietnam.
No, he was against Iraq War I, and he never lived it down. Yeah, no. See, all the Democrats that opposed Iraq War, all the Democrats that opposed Desert Storm were terribly embarrassed by that and had a hard time living that down. Right, him and all the Senate Democrats, and you remember Bill Clinton was just the governor of Arkansas, but he had publicly opposed the war too, and had to really like apologize and live that down because that was such a great war that everybody loved so much. And the lesson was learned by those Democrats that when W. Bush was going back to Iraq, we're not going to make that same mistake again. This wasn't the same mistake. This was a whole different one.
Right. We're going to support the Bush next time when he wants to go into the Middle East. Right. And it got his son killed. And it's fascinating that I mean, it's really possible. You're suggesting that really changed Biden's mind on a lot of these things. If that's true,
I'm not saying I can see the cause and effect there. I only know that he knows that it's true. Yeah. And then I think, well, I mean, what's a father going to do in a situation like that? And it's not like World War II where, hey, man, we're fighting the Nazis or the Japanese, and a lot of people gave their sons for that thing. But you can rationalize that in a way against the implacable enemy, but on some goat rope BS misadventure where we don't belong, as Jeff Huber would put it. No, it's just unforgivable.
But Biden's chosen Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, Tony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, up until, I mean, I think even after the election, but all last year, both those guys were saying consistently, we need to do more, meaning intervention in Syria. So why would he pick those two guys to be his foreign policy leaders if he really feels bad about what happened to his poor son, Bo? And I don't know.
Sucks. I mean, he's still Joe Biden. Look, I mean, if you want to, on that point, and look, I would have way rather, well, Sullivan shouldn't be there at all. He's far more dangerous than Blinken, I think. But he did not make Mike Morrell the director of the CIA. He made William Burns, who's a much more reasonable kind of a guy with a take on Russia compared to a lot of these guys. Mike Morrell was the one who went on the Charlie Rose show talking about we need to be killing Russians in Syria right now. And then he came back and Charlie Rose goes, I wanted to give you a chance to clarify that you didn't really mean that, right? He goes, that's exactly what I mean. Kill Russians in Syria. 2 shows in a row, this kook. And everyone was saying, of course, he's the natural pick to replace Haspel at CIA. Everyone knows he's going to be the new CIA director. And he also could have picked Michelle Flournoy, who had been, the leader of CNAS and one of the major cheerleaders and pushers for the Afghan surge, and who was the Deputy Secretary of Defense for Policy in charge of losing that war, and was Blinken's partner at their little, war profiteers, West exec advisors thing in the Trump years while they were off duty cashing in. And Biden didn't pick her either and picked instead this guy, Lloyd Austin, who, whatever you say about him, he's a sober guy, not one of these ideological kooks and look, I know he's on the board of directors of Raytheon. He's not a good man, but
he's better than he could have been.
It's like an idiocracy. Like, first of all, Your Honor, just look at him, right? Like, I urge everybody, just take a look at Lloyd Austin. This is not a guy who's out for himself. This is a guy who's a 4-star general who takes his job seriously, who has interests other than sucking up to whoever's paying him or whatever foreign nation, Saudi or whatever Israel wants. He was the commander of CENTCOM. So that doesn't mean he's a good man or whatever, but it just means he has a higher sense of what is going on here than just me, like a lot of these people. I'll give him that much credit, at least. Okay. And so I don't know, man, it could be worse. It could be a lot worse. I think Jake Sullivan is the worst one. I mean, guy looks like Skeletor anyway, right? Like he looks really dangerous. I don't know. It's kind of psycho.
Tony,
you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of in the cartoon movie Heavy Metal, where the Secretary of Defense, he kind of is like based on Donald Rumsfeld from the Ford years, I think, the Secretary of Defense. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
The cocaine, the coke snorting alien guys come down and kidnap the girl from the meeting at the Pentagon. Mm-hmm. But that's who Jake Sullivan reminds me of, is like Just that weird pasty face, like very combed hair, kind of weird.
See, Blinken scares me more because he's like, he looks bloodless. He looks like he doesn't have any blood in his body. He just seems like this total like Borg, like,
well, yeah, I mean, to me that's Sullivan. Yeah, no, Sullivan is
inhuman.
more Skeletor looking even than Blinken. And I'm probably not one to talk here, but anyway,
all right.
my skin is gray. What can I say?
It's from spending all that time reading about foreign policy in your room. So let's finish the Yemen story. Okay, so Obama decides in 2015 to support Saudi Arabia in bombing the living shit out of the poor people of Yemen. And that was the policy, which Trump continued and maybe even escalated a bit. I don't know about that, but he certainly continued it at least. And then now we're reversing it, I guess, maybe. So I guess, did we tell the whole story there? Do people need to know more? I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess, yeah, I got us all the way through, how the war started. And then it's essentially been the same thing since 2015. It's the U.S. and Britain, especially backing the Saudis' air war. We have American military and intelligence and private mercenary type contractors taking care of all the intelligence, the logistics, the targeting, and all the care and feeding of the Saudi military, replenishing of their weapon stocks and every other thing. So if it's true that they mean what they say, which I do think that they do, at least provisionally here, as you put it, then we'll see a quick end to this aspect of it and should see an end to the Saudi war against the Houthis and some other resolution of this crisis. The war cannot succeed. It is not succeeding. They are not rousting the Houthis out of Sana'a. And then, by the way, I didn't mention this before, but when the Houthis took over the capital, the first thing they did was propose a new constitution with a new upper and lower house, and women and minority groups would have their own say in the lower house and all these type things. They didn't think that, of course, our small tribe of Zaidi Shiites from the north are the natural rulers of all Yemen, right? Like they are the group that's in charge of the government now, sort of like if a Texan becomes the president for a while or something like that, but it doesn't mean that they have the natural authority to rule the whole country forever from their territory or their one group. And they didn't seem to think that they did, right? They weren't trying to consolidate everything. They were trying to compromise and make peace with the different factions. But the Saudis just wouldn't have it. And the Americans with them just wouldn't have it and bomb the hell out of them anyway. So I'm not saying they're liberal Democrats or great guys. I don't know a single positive thing to say about them. I've never heard of anyone say a nice thing about the Houthis to repeat to you, right? They're not the white hats in this situation or anything like that. It's just they're not our enemies. There's no reason for us to hate them or want to fight them. And really, I think what I'd like to see more than anything is for America to completely cease intervention in Yemen. And let's see what happens when the Houthis and Al-Qaeda fight it out without foreign intervention. And good luck to the Houthis, man. At least they didn't try to blow up the USS Cole that one time and kill 17 sailors.
Yeah. Let's stop selling bomber jets to Saudi Arabia too. That might help.
Exactly.
Right. All right.
And that'll make an immediate difference too. I mean, we just call all that off to run out of bombs in a week.
Oh yeah. And they can't even fly their own planes, right? Barely. Isn't that right? Like their Air Force is like totally dependent on us for help, isn't it?
Well, certainly in all the care, maintenance, and feeding. I guess there have been advances in their pilots have had more and more experience in doing this lately. I'll go ahead and tell you, man, I had 5 different sources with one source each so that they knew that there were American white boys sitting in the back seats of those F-15s, helping, holding those princelings' hands, helping them fly and get to those targets this whole time. But I never could confirm that. And when I asked Mark Perry about that, he goes, no way, dude, they wouldn't do that. Too much risk, too much, at stake for them to get caught doing this kind of thing. And I don't buy it at all. So I don't really know. But, but certainly the Americans trained them how to fly their planes one way or the other.
Doesn't matter. I mean, yes, that Air Force is propped up and directed largely by the United States, right? I mean, and trained. Yeah. Okay.
And they fly F-15s and they fly British Typhoons too. And so BAE Systems and the British are all up to their eyeballs in this.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Maybe a couple more questions on the Middle East, and then we got to get to Europe. So yeah, I keep talking about this, especially when you come on the show, but to me, I see 2 alliances forming. I'm not the only one who says this in the Middle East. So you have on one side, you have sort of the Sunni alliance, but it has So that has the Saudi Arabia at the head of it, but you have United States backing it, and then Israel also backing it, at least for the moment, which is a fascinating brand new development in world history, or at least for the last couple of years. And then against them is the Shia coalition, I guess, Shia led. So you got Iran at the head of it, and then you have Assad in Syria as part of it, and they are backed by Russia. Now, I've said this a million times to you and others, that's just, to me, that's a world war waiting to happen. You got those two alliances, pretty scary. And if the United States goes into Syria, and I had James Carden on the show, by the way, to talk about this.
Yeah, he's great.
And he said, but this is just obvious, this, and if the United States goes into Syria in a serious way, that means necessarily, as things stand now, a shooting war with Russia. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it depends on exactly what they think they're going to do. Because right now they've carved off a little piece of the East. If they think they're going to carpet bomb Damascus, then yes, they're going to have to shoot down the Russian Air Force to get it done. Okay. Because the Russian Air Force will be shooting them down for trying it.
Right.
So, but I don't think they're going to do that though, man. And that ship has already sailed. Now, there are attempts to rehabilitate the effort. I mean, I don't know exactly what's happening with this, but I saw the early leaks on Twitter that my old friend Martin Smith from Frontline went and interviewed Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, the leader of al-Nusra. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, in Syria, in the Idlib province, the Islamist Caliphate of Idlib province there, and went to Turkey and interviewed him. And so I don't know whether, I guess I have to tell you, I'm suspicious that is the first step in a new effort to restart that war on behalf of the Al-Qaeda guys against Assad.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, man, how unrealistic is that? I mean, Assad already won this war and America lost it, and the Russians intervened. And that was it. John Kerry's on tape telling the Syrian rebels, I'm sorry, guys. Geez, we were trying to help you. And he even says, we saw the rise of the Islamic State and we thought we could manage. We thought we could use them to pressure Assad to leave. But what Assad do? He picked up the phone and he called Putin and he said, save me. And Putin sent in the Air Force. And now this is John Kerry talking. So what am I supposed to do now, kids? Right? Like, that's a paraphrase. But like, now that the Russians are here, that's kind of it. And Hillary Clinton was saying we need a no-fly zone in 2016. This is 4 years ago now. Going on 5 years ago in the campaign. Yeah, we need a no-fly zone in Syria, no-fly zone in Syria. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Obama's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dunford, told Congress, well, that would mean war with Russia. And I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I mean, what are you, crazy? Okay. And so, in other words, that ship has already sailed, dude. You can't restart like it's 2011 and 12 again and restart the war in Syria at this point. I just can't see it.
Okay, but hang on. So, but then Blinken, as I said, and Sullivan have been saying all along this last year that we need to do more in Syria. They've been super specific, but they've been pretty clear that it's some kind of military intervention by the United States into Syria. What could that be other than arming Al-Qaeda? I mean, what's a different way for the United States to intervene in Syria than they already have done?
Yeah, and look, what damage can Al-Qaeda do outside of the Idlib province?
I'm asking you, what do you think those guys have in mind if that ship has sailed? Like, what is the new way to intervene in Syria that they haven't done before?
More sanctions and more, attempted diplomatic coercion, and I don't know what, turn a blind eye to more Turkish and Saudi support for al-Nusra or something like that. But I don't know, man.
All right.
I mean, it could be. Here's the thing, I guess. Right now, there's this weird status quo in the Idlib province because the Turks are protecting the different groups on the ground there and won't let the Syrians get too far. And then the Russians, I'm not exactly sure. I should catch up with a couple of experts about the exact nature of the different agreements as they stand now, because they've been broken for a time, right? The al-Nusra was supposed to stay back behind this line and they never did, and all these kinds of things. But I mean, one kind of obvious result, I mean, they're basically all cornered in the Idlib province now. Whatever's left of ISIS and al-Nusra and whoever, almost entirely. I guess ISIS, there's a little bit way out east, but essentially they're all there. And it seems like if the Biden wants to go back to 2011, 12, and 13 and start pouring a bunch of money and guns into there, then the Russians will just carpet bomb them, right? So far, the Russians are holding back and not doing that. And I'm not exactly sure, what's holding the status quo there.
Mm.
At some point, I think the world is waiting for the Russians and the Syrian Arab army to go in there and crush what's left of Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
And at some point, the Turks are going to have to recognize that that is the natural way of things here. We supported this army against these guys. It got as far as it got. Now the Turks are still backing them because they can use them to pressure whatever concessions out of Assad and out of the Kurds, especially they think the Syrian Kurds who they hate.
They don't hold they don't hold.
But for the long term, but the idea that they're going to go back to seeking regime change in Damascus, and that Biden would do like Obama and Petraeus in 2011 and say go for it, I just don't see it, man. I can't imagine.
I hope so.
They'd be crazy. And I did hear, I don't know what Blinken and Sullivan said that you're referring to, but I did hear Susan Rice, pardon me, Kamala Harris saying that, well, we are definitely going to support the dignity and democracy for the Syrian people, whatever. Well, and you want to read that the hard way, then yeah, okay, we're going back to supporting Al-Qaeda. But you could also read that like, yeah, gee, we don't know what the fuck we're gonna do. We're gonna try to support a democratic reading circle, and we're gonna have a Friends of Syria meeting in Tunisia, and we're gonna
right.
What are they gonna do, man? They already tried this and they already lost. They already lost because the IRGC and Hezbollah and the Russians came and took the state side. And so America and Ayman al-Zawahiri and Mohammed bin Salman's coalition fell apart.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't know ISIS, they don't control territory, do they? ISIS in Syria?
Nah, there's still just a few random fighters running around out in the desert somewhere.
Because Trump,
not many.
Because Trump basically killed almost all of them with the ground war. Right.
Yeah, he finished the Iraq War 3 in Iraq and in Syria.
Exactly. Right.
And so the caliphate itself is gone, but in Iraq there's still hundreds of fighters, maybe thousands of fighters still running around causing troubles, and they always will be.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about Iraq War 2, right? Is there's this religious fault line there, and I'm not saying that they're fighting over, oh yeah, you don't believe right, you're a heretic and I'm mad at you kind of thing, because it's not what it's about. It's about power. It's about who's on whose side and who controls what land and territory and wealth and power, right? Is what we're talking about, human men. But the point is, they moved the line. Baghdad was right on the fault line between the Sunni and Shia Arabs, and it was an extremely mixed city. Now it's not. It was ruled by the Sunni minority. At the top, the Ba'ath Party did have Christians and Shia and whatever, but at the very top cast of the Ba'ath Party were Sunnis. And about half the population of the capital city were Sunnis. Not anymore. Now because of George W. Bush and his war of 2003 through 2008/11, right around there, they finished this massive sectarian cleansing campaign where they kicked all of the Sunni Arabs out of the capital city and made it a completely, almost entirely Shiite controlled government in an almost entirely Shiite controlled city. The only Sunni Arabs left there are in one neighborhood in the far west of the city. And that's it. In fact, they're not even 20% of the country anymore. They're only like 13% of the country now, because so many of them were displaced by the war, living in refugee camps in Syria and wherever else. But this is the first time that the Shiites have ruled a capital city in 1,000 years. Right. They ruled Cairo. The Safavids conquered Cairo in the year 1100 and something, or whatever it was. But they never were the majority and ruled the city, right? Like they were just there temporarily until they lost and had to go home.
Wow.
But now this is a permanent change. George W. Bush took the line on the map and he moved it from here to here. And that means that there will always be some form of Al-Qaeda in Iraq flinging suicide bombers at Shiite Baghdad for the rest of all history. And the kings of Saudi Arabia will never stand for it, but they also can't do a damn thing about it.
Whoa. I didn't know about that huge demographic shift in Iraq and the cleansing, the sectarian.
Got all the maps in the book. It's all in there in the Iraq War II section.
Good. The ethnic cleansing. Gosh, damn, how brutal and bloody just that part of the war is. All right, about Iran, and then we'll go to Europe. So Israel is terribly concerned about Iran, right? Preoccupied, one might say. And what was it, just a few weeks ago, a nuclear reactor, got blown up and almost certainly was destroyed by Israel, right? Am I getting that right?
Oh, I don't think it was a nuclear reactor. I mean, they attacked
It was a nuclear.
Natanz.
It was a nuclear plant, wasn't it? Some kind of.
Yeah, well, they attacked. Well, and honestly, man, I've been so bogged down in my history book here that I'm a little bit behind on the current events. But I think what you're referring to is last summer when they sabotaged Natanz and blew up a building over there.
No,
you're talking about something brand new.
No, there's a bombing just a few weeks ago.
Inside Iran.
Inside Iran.
I'm sorry, I'm behind.
I'm 95% sure it was a nuclear facility of some sort, and they blew up just a chunk of it, but like the most important chunk of it. I don't know if it was the reactor or not, but I mean, everyone assumes it was Israel. Even like establishment people know it was Israel. I mean, who else would do that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, they've been on a campaign of sabotage attacks like that in the country, including assassinations and the rest. Yeah.
They've been killing scientists in Iran. They've been blowing up stuff. We know this. I mean, they have never admitted to it, but everyone, even establishment people, know it's Israel, right? So is Israel paranoid, dude? Is Israel paranoid, or do they?
No, they're cynical.
Oh.
Nah, they're liars. They're not afraid of Iran. Come on, this is all a put on, man. I'll tell you what. You know what? You got to read. If you've never read this book, you'll love this book. You'll devour this thing. I want to read it again. It's so damn good and horrible. It's Trita Parsi, Treacherous Alliance.
Oh, yeah.
The secret relationship between the U.S., Iran, and Israel. And of course, with the poor Iraqis stuck in the middle of all of this crap that has almost nothing to do with them, right? But then what's so great, so this is Trita's PhD thesis, which then turned into a full book too. And it's all, you know, every footnote is interviews with the highest level strategic thinkers and planners in Israel, the United States, and Iran. Wow. And so you don't get any of this news cycle level BS. You know, oh, Netanyahu claims this and whatever. None of that kind of crap is in there. It's all the highest level strategic thinking about who's doing what and why they're changing their mind from one thing to another and this kind of deal. And Israel's turn against Iran was not motivated by the radical fundamentalist Islamist Shiite revolution of 1979. They stayed friends with them until 1993. And, you know, the mean old Ayatollah Khomeini, he died in 89. Well, they got along with him the whole time just fine. When Ronald Reagan sold them missiles during Iran-Contra, he used the Israelis as the cutout to do it because they were already selling missiles to Iran anyway. Okay. In fact, that was the cutout, was you guys sell them more missiles and we'll replenish your stocks. And that's the deniable nature of the project right there. So it wasn't until 93, after the Iran-Iraq war, when America, you know, somewhat with Israel's encouragement too, had decimated Iraq's military power and left them unable to supposedly contain and balance against Iran, that Israel insisted, one, on American policy in the Clinton administration of dual containment from Saudi Arabia. If Iraq can't check Iran and balance Iran anymore, we got to balance them both from bases in Saudi. And that's America's new superpower position there. And of course, that's what got our towers knocked down, was staying in Saudi at Israel's insistence there. And then the other thing was inside Israel, it was Yitzhak Rabin who changed the policy from what they called the periphery doctrine, which was we want to be friends with the Turks and the Iranians and the Ethiopians and others on the far side of our near Arab adversaries in order to keep their attention divided. And, you know, so for example, being friends with Iran in order to keep Saddam Hussein off balance. He can't look at us if he's got to be looking at his eastern flank all the time instead of his western one, right? So that was the periphery doctrine. And then, so this has nothing to do with anything anybody did, right? It's like the Ayatollah did something that the Israelis were reacting to. They just had a change in policy. That now what we want to do is, and this is Rabin's government, we want to negotiate with the Palestinians, and for that matter, with the closer Arab states. And so then we want to turn them and back them against the periphery. And so, and not so much turn on the Turks, but at least turn on the Iranians. Okay. And so they just decided to start scapegoating the Iranians. And in Trita's book, it's great because he has these quotes of the Clinton administration officials are just like, what? Did you guys hear what happened today? No, what happened? Oh, yeah, no. Now the Israelis, get this. The Israelis say that now Iran's the bad guy. And we got to be, and then they all think this is hilarious because the Iranians have been saying, no, we love Iran and you should too, since 79, this whole time. And now they're saying, no. You need to get hard on Iran right now. And the Clintonites are like, man, are you kidding me? Like, that's what we were already doing. And you guys were, whatever. Anyway, so they just cynically switch. But then here's the joke, right? Is a Netanyahu fan shot Rabin dead.
Yeah.
And then Perez took over, and then Netanyahu and the rest of them took over. So now, and I guess I left this out, but Gareth writes about this too in his book, but Trita does a great job of this and showing how part of scapegoating Iran was getting away with negotiating with the Palestinians. Now, to anyone who really cares about the Palestinians, you probably know, and Jeremy R. Hammond has this great book called Obstacle to Peace about the U.S. role in the Israel-Palestine conflict. And he really debunks the idea that Rabin really wanted to create a two-state solution and a real Palestinian state. He didn't. He was talking about some ghetto Bantustan, South African style something. But compared to the rest of them, this was really something. And it was meant to be a final status solution. We're not going to purge the land of Palestinians. They get to stay in these areas and have this kind of pseudo sovereignty, whatever. Well, it might as well have been full independence in terms of what the hardcore Zionists thought about it. You know what I mean? To them, it was treason, whatever. But anyway, Rabin was scapegoating Iran so that he could get away with negotiating with the Palestinians. You think the Palestinians are bad? Look at Iran, right? Well, everybody who came after him has had no intention of truly negotiating with the Palestinians. Perez and Netanyahu and Ehud Barak and then Sharon and Olmert and now Netanyahu again, they've had no interest in giving up the West Bank. They're stealing that West Bank one way or the other. The Palestinians can go drown in the river or go burn in the Sinai desert. Someday the cleansing's coming, but that land belongs to Israel no matter what. That's their point of view. And then anytime you complain about it, they go, oh yeah, but what about Iran? And they use Iran as the excuse to divert attention from the fact, not that they're negotiating with the Palestinians, but the fact that they'll never negotiate with the Palestinians and they'll never let them be free. And so then Iran becomes a perfect scapegoat for Israel to pretend like there's an enemy out there anywhere. Just like America, pointing and screaming about Vladimir Putin. It's all just a bunch of made up crap for the interests of state, not for the interests of the people of Israel, the people of the Middle East, or anywhere else.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that analysis.
That's the deal.
I like it. I will have to check on it, but it sounds right. And
you're going to love that book, man.
Yeah.
And you're going to interview Trita Parsi for 5 hours. I'm telling you what.
I was going to say I should have him on the show. Yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you what, you're going to love it.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's heavy, man. Have never heard any of that. That's amazing.
Oh no, that book just blew my socks off. I already know a lot of this stuff, but then reading it from him and put together in the way that he puts it together is just, he talks about, he has this great quote from this, really powerful Israeli military strategist explaining how, a big part of the reason we turned on Iran, was because after the Soviet Union, we needed a reason for America to want us and need us. They didn't need us anymore because our excuse that we were keeping the Reds out was now expired. And so we decided, right, for their own interest, has nothing to do with anything any Ayatollah did at all, Thad.
Okay.
We decided that radical Islam would be new glue for the alliance with the Americans. Okay. And radical Islam, of course, is plenty vague enough that you can point at whoever you want. You can point at Saddam Hussein in a French beret with his clean-shaven chin and call him Islamic extremism if you want and get away with whatever you want. Bashar al-Assad in his three-piece suit is Islamic extremism. We got to fight him somehow. And you do whatever you want with that. New glue for the alliance with the Americans. What would you ever do without us? We're out here at Fort Apache fighting the bad guys for you, keeping you safe. When no, they're the motivation for all the bad guys to turn against us. Them and the policies that we institute at their behest, such as staying in Saudi and such as exploiting 9/11 to invade Iraq.
Damn. Scott Horton just threw down. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That was amazing. That's a whole new thing I got to think about with the Middle East. All right, let's move on to Europe, and then I'll let you go. And we don't have to spend too much time on this because we've already done an hour and a half here. But so you're going to be much less sanguine, I think, about the Biden administration when it comes to Europe, right? In fact,
I'm terrified, man.
Yeah, you just tweeted today something very provocative about Ukraine. Go ahead.
Look, I think, and this is the argument about Trump and Hillary Clinton too. I think Hillary Clinton might have gotten us all killed.
Jeez. Yeah.
And I think the same thing about John McCain.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing about Joe Biden right now. And these guys, I just interviewed this guy. You can probably read him. His name's Lyle Goldstein. He's from the Navy War College, whatever the hell, but he has good opinions and writes them with big disclaimers about he's not speaking for the Navy. And his specialty is Russia and China, and how we don't have to have great power competition with them. We don't have to fight them. This is all self-fulfilling prophecy, man. We're picking this fight, man. We don't have to do this. And essentially, I wrote this piece, Thad, last February, a year ago. It was a speech I gave the day that they signed the now canceled peace deal with the Taliban, withdrawal deal with the Taliban, Leap Day 2020. It was for the King County Libertarians in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah.
It's called "The New Cold War with Russia is All America's Fault." And you know how I am, man. I'm kind of a jerk about it. So I just am merciless in putting all of the blame on Bill Clinton and George Bush and Barack Obama and Donald Trump for ruining everything, because they suck, and they did. And they lied, and they created a disaster where they had a potential paradise, man. They just goddamn ruined everything. They didn't have to do it. And I sent it to Ray McGovern, who was the former chief of the Soviet division at the CIA, but has been a great anti-war guy this whole century long, as a good friend of mine and regular guest on my show. And I sent it to Lyle Goldstein, and they both agreed with every word of it. They both said it was 100% right. And they stand by, every word of it. Ray didn't like my title. He thought I could have been a little more subtle with the title, but, and I asked the guy again today. I go, look, I got to tell you, man, I'm a non-interventionist. I'm an anti-government extremist. I hate these guys, and I'm committed to not ever doing anything ever. But I got to admit then that really colors my point of view on this. And maybe I'm missing something. So why don't you tell me like the scariest shit about Russia I need to know about? How, no, man, they really are bad and evil and coming for us, and something does have to be done, but what? And he's like, nah, no, you're right. There's nothing, dude. It's all America's fault. We're the ones who picked this fight. We expanded our military alliance right up to their border. We claim that the Monroe Doctrine applies to the entire planet Earth, and yet they have no right to have the slightest bit of influence in countries directly on their border. We brought Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, the Baltic states, right on their western flank into the NATO military alliance, not to mention Poland and Hungary, and now all the Balkan states. And in the speech yesterday, Thad, Biden, who was involved in, very responsible for the coup d'etat in Kiev, Ukraine in February 2014. We know that straight out of the horse that is Robert Kagan's wife's, Victoria Nuland's, mouth, that Biden was guilty and involved with her in that plot. And he said that we want to go back to that policy of trying to bring Ukraine into NATO. And the thing about that is that will cause a nuclear war.
Jesus, what?
That is the thing. There's no way in the world, this is like saying that the Russians are going to bring Cuba into the Warsaw Pact. Well, I don't know, Thad, Mr. Academic Historian, you got any idea what America might do if something like that were to ever transpire? They were to make a move along those lines. And the way I learned it, Jack Kennedy, about 12, 13 years before I was born, almost blew up the whole damn world before he let the Russians bring Cuba into their alliance, right? But now, so what if they overthrew the government in Ottawa? What if they used Nazis to do a coup d'etat, a violent street putsch, and overthrow the government of Canada to bring in a pro-Russian regime in Canada, which then went to war immediately against everybody in British Columbia who refused to submit to their new rule, and called it a war on terrorism, and did it with Russian help, attacked the people in the far west of Canada? What would America do? You already know the answer. Everybody listening knows the answer. We launch every H-bomb we got and kill the whole world dead before we let the Russians take over Canada, period. Every last man, woman, and child on this planet would either be exploded to death, burned to death, or starved to death, because America would not let the Russians take Canada away from us, period.
Mhm.
Period. Well,
Mhm.
oh no, but you know what? Vladimir Putin, that psychopath, monster, tyrant, madman, you know what he should do? He should sit there and bend over and take it when we bring Ukraine into NATO, our military alliance. And, oh, what's he going to do? I mean, I don't know. I read a story. I don't know if you saw this. Read this last night. They got the whole thing on video. A guy and his girlfriend are out front, or a guy and his wife, and they're shoveling snow, and it's landing in the neighbor's yard. And the neighbor goes, "Hey, knock it off with the snow. I'm over here shoveling snow, and your snow's getting on my yard, and you better quit it." And the guy and the wife, they start mocking him and ridiculing him and fighting back, like arguing back. Instead of saying sorry, they escalate the thing and insult him. The guy goes inside and gets a gun. He comes out, he points it at the guy. And you know what he said? "Yeah, go ahead." And then you know what happened, Thad? The guy shot him dead. And then his wife too. He shot them both dead. And then he went inside and he shot himself to death. Because this idiot couldn't just say, "Sorry, man. I know you're having a bad day and I didn't mean to get snow over the line." And instead said to a man with a gun, "What are you going to do about it, stupid?" And the guy with the gun killed him, man, because that's why he was pointing the gun. It was a threat. So why are you going to do that? The guy, he shouldn't have killed him, but the guy was guilty of felony stupidity, if not aggression toward this man. You know, a guy's pointing a gun at you, say sorry, dude. You know, come on. What are you going to do?
Wow.
Famous last words. And that's what Tony Blinken and Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan think that they can do in Ukraine. What are you going to do about it, Vladimir Putin, who every other hour of the day they accuse of being a sociopathic monster?
Yep.
Which he's not, thank God. But, you know, there are red lines. Gareth Porter's book behind me in the Vietnam section there is called The Perils of Dominance. And it's about how the reason these jerks got us into Vietnam is because they thought it'd be easy. We're the superpower. They're a bunch of guys in black pajamas and sandals. They're backed by the communists. Sure, they got some AK-47s, but we got everything. We've got high tech. We can do it, and they can't do nothing. But the reality is that Ho Chi Minh didn't need to have an equal amount of power to the Americans to resist them. All he needed to have was a line in his own mind that he would not allow the Americans to cross. All he needed was to make a decision that if you guys want to prop up a government in South Vietnam, I'm going to fight it, and my men are too. And Ho Chi Minh would have rather get bombed to death and see his whole damn country bombed to death than see them submit to foreign white military occupiers again. The line was drawn. He would not back down from it. We bombed them for 10 years anyway and then lost anyway. And just because America was the dominant power on earth did not mean we could be the dominant power in Vietnam. And the reason why is because they said, "Yet, that's it. We won't put up with it." And we think that the Russians, who, again, every other minute of the day are the implacable enemy. But when we do this, they're just a mouse. And they wouldn't dare to tell us no or do anything about it. Does that make sense at all? The fact that we even talk about this, and Vladimir Putin, find him anytime you hear Vladimir Putin goes, "Well, you know, our American partners sometimes make decisions we disagree with." You know what, man? I'm pretty relieved that we've got such a cool customer in charge over there, because things could be much worse. They did the coup and installed a pro-American or, pro-American and pro-Western government in this, violent coup of 2014.
Yep. And
what the Russians do, they took their own Crimean Peninsula back,
right,
which never really belonged to Ukraine in the first place,
right,
and did so non-violently in a coup de main where they just showed up and owned the place, and that was it. And then when the Kiev government launched a war against the pro-Russian separatists in the East, Putin sent special operations forces to help assist them in resisting that violence, which 10,000 and more of them died anyway in the thing. But he refused to absorb the Donbass. He could have just redrawn the Russian border and said the Donbass region in far eastern Ukraine is now part of Russia and the Russian Federation. No one would have been able to do anything about that. And in fact, the people of the Donbass held a referendum where they voted to do just that and asked the Russians to please allow them to join the Russian Federation. And Putin told them no. He didn't want to, he was not on a mission to expand Russia's border there. He was just going to help the people of the East defend themselves. Again, he could have been in Kiev in 2 weeks. He could have said, you know what? We held a fair and square election in 2010, and you guys want to hire a bunch of Hitler-loving Nazis to cancel the thing. Well, guess what? I'm going to cancel that just like I canceled the Hitlerians last time too. Watch me. And then what are we going to do about it? And then so I'm asking you, I guess I'm asking everybody, like, how far are we willing to go to prove this point that we can do anything, that the full spectrum of the whole planet belongs to us, and not even Russia and not even China can be independent from our empire? What's it worth? This is not a question of containing Russian aggression. There is no Russian aggression. Their intervention in Ukraine was defensive. Their intervention in Syria was defensive. That's it. That's it. I mean, Putin, our Putin, Joe Biden, as has been pointed out in numerous articles. Sheldon Richman's new article at the Institute today quotes Biden saying, yeah, you got to cease your Russian aggression, such as your poisoning of your own citizens. Like, what? In other words, they're just admitting that Alexei Navalny is a CIA agent. He's our Juan Guaido. He's given up his Russian nationality. Now he's a foreign sock puppet tool, enemy of the Russian state at all. The Americans are essentially admitting it. You try to poison our recruited CIA traitor from your population? Why, that's aggression against Western powers. I mean, how else do you, how more blatantly can you wear that on your sleeve? You know, they want this guy to be the next president there, but then they stamp the big Ahmed Chalabi stamp right on his forehead. You know, this guy doesn't represent you. He represents us. Attention, all Russians. This guy's an American, you know, and then they try to force him on them and expect the Russian people to rally behind this guy. Jesus. What a joke.
Fucking Christ. I did not know about such a hard red line drawn by the Russians around Ukraine. I mean, I'm not surprised by it at all.
Yeah.
I know how much they care about, you know, Ukraine. But if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, you're saying that Russia will go to war over that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that they would.
Damn. And we know for sure that the Biden, Clinton, Obama wing of the Democratic Party totally wants not just Ukraine, but all of Europe in NATO.
Yeah, but the French and the Germans stopped them before.
Including Russia. They want Russia to be a part of NATO too, and Putin won't.
Well, yeah, I mean, or at least subject to it.
Whatever, yeah.
You know, dictates, yeah, under a sock puppet regime. But the thing is, I think the French and the Germans, I mean, I hate to rely on them too much, but they made Bush and Obama both cool it on all this Ukraine NATO stuff. They don't want this. And it was the French and the Germans. In fact, if you remember, it was in, I'm going to call it 2015, late 2015. Well, it might have been 2016 when Merkel and Holland came to Washington just to meet with Obama to tell him we are going to Minsk and we are making a deal with Putin. And we're here so that you can tell us good. But that's happening, sir. And then Obama said, okay, go ahead, guys. You have my blessing. But they didn't even make the phone call. They came to DC to announce to Obama, we're ending this war. And Obama said, okay, well, whatever then. And then Merkel and Holland went to Minsk and met with Putin and his guys, or Lavrov, and they hammered out the peace deal that ended at least the worst part of the fighting in the east of the country there. And so that's the only break we got, though. I mean, the Americans, look, it's Robert Kagan's wife, Victoria Nuland, is the one who did the coup in 2014 and is the one that Biden, I keep calling him Obama, that Biden just rehired. And I'm sorry, I forget the job. Before, she was the Assistant Secretary of State for European Affairs.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, he just sent her back to Europe right now. I forgot the exact position. But,
Oh,
and look, when I say Robert Kagan's wife, I mean, Robert Kagan is right-hand man partners, 50-50 partners there with William Crystal.
yeah, he's a neocon.
In coining the new Reaganite foreign policy of benevolent global hegemony. I mean, he's
the top neocon intellectual.
That's right. Him and his brother, Fatneck Fred, and Fred's wife, Kimberly, they run the Institute for the Study of War.
Yep.
And, Fred was major intellectual firepower behind pushing for the Iraq and Afghan surges in 2007 and 2011 and all that, 9 through 12 there.
Yep.
And of course, Robert Kagan continues to pop up all over the place.
These are the most ardent American imperialists we have. That's who we're talking about.
And Zionists too. Remember, Donald Kagan, the father, and Fred on September the 13th, 2001, went on a radio show and said, Bush ought to send the Marines to cleanse the West Bank of Palestinians.
Whoa. Didn't know that.
That's who they are. They're not Americans. They're Israel's fifth column in the United States. That's what the neoconservative movement is.
We have a slight disagreement about that, but that's for the next time you're on the show. All right, man. Epic. I have to like decompress after this. I got so much, and also I'm now fucking terrified again. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Yeah, you're welcome.
World War III coming. Everybody get Scott's book, Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. Get his book, Fool's Errand, about Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan. Listen to the goddamn Scott Horton show, and go to renegadeuniversity.com to get Scott's courses on those subjects. And hopefully by the time this comes out, there will be a deal which includes a free copy of Scott's book. So check it out and do all that and immerse yourself in the world of Scott Horton, because Scott, you're the only person, I keep saying this, you're the only person doing this. You're the only person with an anti-war perspective who really, really studies foreign policy. There's no one else. You're the man. So thanks for doing
there's a whole team of guys at antiwar.com who do a ton of great work and who I benefit from all their work all day, every day. So,
okay, Mr. Humble. Okay. But yes, I agree. I mean, anti-war is awesome and you get help, but you still you're leading the ship, and without you, we're fucked. There's nobody doing foreign policy.
All right. I don't know about that. I appreciate that though. Hey, let me say one thing, which is, there's this guy named Gus Cantavaro.
Yes.
Who, did I mention this before we went on the air or after?
I can't remember.
Me either. Well, I'll say it again.
Yeah.
He came and filmed me here.
Oh yeah.
And in one day we knocked out the whole book, 14 chapters in pieces in video. So it's Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism, a video adaptation. And that's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Scott Horton Show.
Great.
And so far we have Carter, Reagan, Bush, and Clinton. And then next we get into the war on terrorism begins with W. Bush and all that. And eventually there'll be 14 of them. And we're putting them out every 1 or 2 or 3 days here.
Great.
So all that's at YouTube. And then I hope that especially once all 14 chapters are out and it's one big playlist, that people really get a kick out of that and help share it and pass it around. And then, because not everybody's going to read the book, but you can get the gist of the thing there.
I love it. Multiple formats. This is the way to do it. Hey man, thank you again. This is really, wow. I mean, they're always amazing. This might be my favorite Scott Horton appearance so far. I learned so much. Appreciate it.
It's great to talk to you, Thad. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk soon. Bye, Scott.
Bye.
This is the Unregistered podcast, and I'm Thaddeus Russell. To join the new Renegade University, go to renegadeuniversity.com. To join the new Unregistered Underground, the supporting listeners group for the podcast, go to unregisteredunderground.com. Thanks for listening.